One case is maybe about to declare. The first is already on stage with us. He is the Honorable Jack Ciattarelli, former Assemblyman and 2021 Republican nominee for governor. The second is the Honorable Baraka, Mayor of the City of Newark. And the Honorable John Bramnick, Senator in the New Jersey State Senate. Right, so I have my marching orders. Department of Commerce, yes or no? Start with you, Jack.
That was in my platform last time around, and she said it best, it's a no-brainer. The Commissioner of the Department of Commerce would be a cabinet-level position, and reporting to the Commissioner will be 4 Deputy Commissioners, each responsible for economic development initiatives in North, Central, South, Jersey, and the Jersey Shore, because each one is unique in terms of its attributes, but also in terms of its challenges.
Yeah, I would first agree that we do need someone in a cabinet position that deals with commerce. But I would also argue that not just commerce, but also diversity and inclusion and equity at the same time, to make sure that we are investing in business and developing economic opportunity in the state, but making sure that every part of the state is a part of that. That if we look at the recent disparity study, and we see that businesses, black and brown businesses, women-owned businesses are not as prosperous in the state as they should be, we need to actually direct funding and support to those organizations to help us, because I don't believe that we should make a choice between strong and fair. I actually believe that strong is fair and fair is strong. That if we did both of those things, our economy would be a lot better off.
I've listened to a number of questions and answers. There's one party rule in Trenton, so it's interesting to ask those questions, but we don't have a seat at the table because Republicans haven't won. And the reason we haven't won, and therefore business does not have a seat at the table, is because the voters don't trust our brand. Now, despite all the criticisms, the polling shows that the governor is right side up 45-40. So he's not going to invite us to the table. No one's getting invited to the table until we win and until we change the Republican brand. And the public views us as the party of Trump. We should be the party of lower taxes, small government, and law and order. And until the public thinks that's what we are, we're going to continue to lose. So it's interesting to look at all the potential questions and answers. And let me just tell you something. If I'm there, I can guarantee you that the person sitting next to me in the cabinet will be the Commissioner of Business. We'll have Commissioner of Labor and Commissioner of Business. But until we get there and you have one party rule, we're basically in an echo chamber.
I thought Republicans were winning.
They have been winning a lot in New Jersey statewide, and that's why I'm running.
Former Governor Cody tells a great story about when Verizon was going to leave New Jersey, and the pitch he tried to make to the CEO to get them to stay. And he said that New Jersey's always going to be a high-cost state, high-quality of life state, as somebody said, but a high-cost state. I can't compete with Virginia on taxes. I can't compete with other states on taxes, but I can compete on the quality of life. What would you do? What's your pitch going to look like when the first company is either coming to New Jersey and you're making the pitch for them to come, or a company that's going to leave and you're asking them to stay? We'll start again. Maybe we'll start with, you want to start with John and stuff?
Well, first they have to have hope. And if we don't stabilize costs, we watch a budget under the Murphy administration go from $34 billion to $55 billion, while the Christie budget went from $29 billion to $34 billion in 8 years versus the Murphy budget. If we continue to tax people out of this state, you're not going to convince any business to stay in this state or come in this state. So we have to give hope to those businesses that we're gonna limit those regulations, that when they call the government, somebody picks up the phone as opposed to going to voicemail. If you call DEP, which I do on behalf of clients, they don't have to say no to everything. They have to think of one reason to say yes. What they need to see is a chief executive officer who's gonna fight for businesses. And we're gonna need a chief executive officer to fight for businesses because the legislature is gonna be Democratic when I become governor. Whatever you need when you're mayor, we'll work it out.
That's what happens now. But at the end of the day, I think that Murphy meant well when he said that, but the reality is I do agree that we need to streamline regulations, permitting, have a one-stop shop for folks to be able to do business in this state. But the reality is New Jersey has incredible assets. And I'm not just contemplating what I would do to bring businesses to the state of New Jersey. I've actually brought businesses to the state of New Jersey, right? So we've actually been number 3 on Amazon's list to come to New Jersey. Mars Wrigley has moved to Newark. McKinsey's come to Newark. Hacks come to tech companies. Over 1,000 businesses have moved to Newark in the last 10 years since I was there. So New Jersey actually sells itself. The problem is that our assets are also our weaknesses. Our infrastructure, our transportation infrastructure is probably the best in this area. Access to rail, access to roads, access to air, to sea. We talk very little about the port, but the port needs to be invested in, expanded. The port is why we're still on our feet in the middle of COVID, because of what's happening up and down the port, one of the largest port systems in the nation, right? We invest there, we expand there, we deal with supply chain issues and all the other things that businesses have problems with. We can get people to the global market faster than any other place. We are positioned between New York and Philadelphia, and New Jersey Transit is probably the busiest corridor. The Northeast Corridor is the busiest, most dense corridor in the nation. So we should be investing there. 2, we have a workforce that's unmatched. We have huge universities, high-class, educational opportunities for people in this state. So at the end of the day, our workforce is very skilled, and we need to invest in workforce and expand that and make it more diverse. We have the ability to do that. We also have a diverse state, right? A diverse state, in comparison to New York and other places like that. We can compete with those places in terms of diversity. We should be uplifting our diversity, investing in our diversity, making sure that the workforce and the labor is diverse, that we are developing small businesses, that we are putting money in businesses that are growing, in sectors that are growing. And I think people want to come to states like that. We think that people don't come because of the cost of doing business. But if you look at the ranking of why businesses come to states, the cost of doing business is weighted less than workforce and infrastructure improvement. So if we invest in workforce, if we invest in infrastructure, I think that helps us tremendously. When Amazon was talking about coming to New Jersey, they weren't talking about how we were going to tax them. They weren't talking about the crime on the streets of law and order. What they were talking about is how are we going to get access to high quality labor force? Where are the skills coming from? Where are universities at, right? When people come to our businesses, where are they going to eat, right? Where are they going to hang out? How are they going to use the train? How are they going to get back and forth to the job? And where will they live in proximity to the business that I'm creating? All those things are important. So if you think that this myopic view of making sure we just lower taxes is going to bring businesses to the state, you'll be mistaken, and you'll bet against yourself in doing that.
The way to get companies to stay, the way to get companies to come, first and foremost, is we need a pro-business governor. And we need an administration that is pro-business. I had my disagreements with Chris Christie. To say one thing about Chris, he was pro-business. His lieutenant governor went out every single day as liaison specifically to the business community and preached a pro-business message. His administration was pro-business. Hal Worth, Department of Labor, Bob Martin, DEP, and on down the line. They didn't run police states. They were there to partner with business. If the answer was no, business got the answer quickly and did what it needed to do to get on with it. And then, of course, optics are important too in terms of policy. I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to policy to make a state pro-business. The Democratic governor, Pennsylvania, cut the business tax in half, from 10 to 5%. Why can't we do that? Why can't we do what Nevada did 15 years ago? Why can't we adopt Delaware's bylaws for corporate governance? These are things that we can do that are fiscally responsible, and we change the perception of New Jersey overnight in terms of being a pro-business state. And let me say one thing I will not do as governor. Nokia recently moved from New Providence, Berkeley Heights campus to New Brunswick. Great for New Brunswick. This administration celebrated that like Nokia came here from Tennessee with 5,000 jobs. I'm not going to celebrate a New Jersey company moving from one town to the next that now leaves an 80-acre campus empty in New Providence and Berkeley Heights. That's not the kind of thing I'm going to celebrate. We can win this war, and it is an economic war with places like Pennsylvania and Delaware. We need a pro-business governor, we need a pro-business administration, and we need policy that's fiscally responsible that says we are open for business.
Can I just say that it's possible to have a pro-business, I would imagine that we're pro-business in Newark, right? I wouldn't think that people would say, oh, Newark is not, we're anti-business. I mean, that's what keeps our economy going. The growth of small businesses, the industry that are coming in, the tech companies, our relationship with Audible that helps us bring more business to the city, more businesses to the city, that incubate small businesses, that creates opportunity for venture capital for tech companies, that we work collectively with the universities, with the business community, and the public sector, that we do this in a collaborative way to create an economy that's fostering development and growth all the time. People want to be a part of a winning thing, right? So they want to be a part of that environment. This kind of myopic and archaic view that there's us versus them is wrong, right? Not only is it wrong, it does not necessarily mean that we'll witness any economic growth in our state. We have to have pro-business, but pro-business does not exclude families. Who's going to work at these businesses, right? Who's going to get back and how are we going to get back and forth to the places that we need? New Jersey has to focus not just on the business community, but also on the people who work there. Where will they live? How will they get back and forth to these places? And unfortunately, somebody has to pay for the infrastructure, whether it's transportation infrastructure, whether it's workforce infrastructure, whether it's digital infrastructure. Somebody has to pay for that, right? And I don't think businesses choose Pennsylvania over New Jersey simply because what's happening is businesses come to New Jersey and the corporate business tax, they find loopholes and take their profits and send them to Pennsylvania and send them to Delaware with lower CBT or none at all. And so they can reap the benefits from being in New Jersey, but also in the other state at the same time. And we have to do something about those loopholes.
But we don't have the kind of balance that the mayor's talking about because the business community doesn't have a real seat at the table. And look, I love the President Bracken, but he's got to come hat in hand to the governor because the governor is focused on his legislative team and his priorities. We want to bring that pro-business seat at the table so there is balance. And that's why we need two parties down in Trenton. And without two parties, we won't have the balance that the mayor's talking about.
So if we were to decide that we were going to try to compete on taxes and do what Pennsylvania has done, I mean, the proposed state budget for this year cuts funds to the Business Action Center. It has cuts to these small business development centers. So what would that look like? What would that mean to the state if we were to go down this road?
Well, in last year's, they talk about budgets as if the budgets are simply one-year budgets. They're not. In the last budget, $1 billion went to special projects in certain legislative districts. Actually, it was done in the middle of the night. If you had taken that $1 billion and the budget before that $1 billion that's spent really in, we call them Christmas tree items in special legislative districts, we'd be able to talk about not lowering taxes, but maintaining taxes and returning money either to communities or to people. But when you do that kind of special spending and there's nobody sitting there to veto it, you need another party to line item these Christmas tree items, and there's nobody there for checks and balances.
Guys, you want to-
You grow your tax revenues by growing your tax base. You grow your tax revenue by having greater economic activity. And I just don't see that happening in New Jersey. And so the budget is all about establishing priorities. You know, it's funny, we hear all this talk in the last year of there need to be a dedicated revenue stream to fund New Jersey Transit. Do we have a dedicated funding stream to make a full pension payment? We don't. And yet Phil Murphy has made a full pension payment. Whether or not you agree with that or not, we have a dedicated revenue stream. It's called the New Jersey state budget. And in that budget, there needs to be priorities. Let me say one other thing about spending. And it's out of control. And we create a runaway train. And we see that now because he's having to dip into surplus and put a whole lot of one-time things, revenue items in the budget. And even now the rating agencies are saying this is a very dangerous situation. John Corzine's last budget was $35 billion. 12 months later, Chris Christie's first budget was $29 billion because of the revenue cliff from the Great Recession. We didn't have people living in the streets. Nobody died. We somehow made it through without borrowing, without raising the taxes. We met the fiscal challenge of the revenue cliff from the Great Recession. It's all about establishing priorities. And as governor, I and my administration will make a priority New Jersey being a pro-business state, because that's the tide that lifts all boats. Not just for companies, big companies and Main Street companies, for individuals. People will live in a state where they believe they can achieve their American dream. And we'll get to the affordable housing part because that's part of the American dream. But a pro-business and great vitality and great economic activity and economic growth creates that opportunity for people to achieve their American dream.
Well, I just have to first, I don't know, we might be living in alternative universes, but like in Newark, we laid off 167, well, the previous administration laid off 167 police officers because of what Ciattarelli is laying out here. We furloughed every worker in the city, in the city government. Services declined tremendously. We lost municipal aid. The city went into deep debt and recession during that period of time. When I came into office, I had a $93 million deficit with a $57 million structural deficit as we walked into City Hall in an unbalanced budget because of the economic cliff that we fell off of during the recession and monies that were cut from state governments to help the least of those in our community where people suffered tremendously. So that's completely a different viewpoint of what happened. I think though we do need fiscal responsibility. We absolutely need that. And I think the budget process should be a multi-year process. So, and it should include, both branches of government, the executive and the legislative branch of government, and a third party that we both agree upon, and talk about some of the things that we can't afford to get rid of: pension, direct property tax relief, funding education, all of these things that are permanent in our budget, so we can stop doing these political favors here and there, making a budget around politics and make it about our fiscal responsibility. We do this collectively and figure out what needs to happen. Still give the governor room to have priorities, because your budget is your moral center. What you depend on, what you spend your money on, and what you invest in is what you believe in. So it's important to give the governor an opportunity to push his values, to push, or her values, to push what's important to them. But it's also necessary for us to come together collectively to figure out how do we have a balanced and sustainable and fiscally responsible budget collectively in generations to come, so we're taking care of our kids, in the future.
And this is what you want. You want the Mayor Baraka, sitting at the table with a Republican governor, and we find that middle ground. And the Republicans have to show, in order to win, we have to show we have a heart, but we also have a pocketbook. So now think about this. What a great state if you had that kind of balance. What Mayor Baraka is saying, I understand, but we're gonna have some compromise. We're gonna meet in the middle, and we're gonna help businesses, but we're all gonna help the families. And that's what people in New Jersey want. They want people in the middle. And Governor Kane used to say about 75% of people in the middle. If we go too far right and we look a little crazy, Republicans are gonna lose. So we're gonna come back a little bit and have that kind of dialogue, and then we'll have a state where we have balance.
I'm gonna put you on my team.
Balance is what it's all about.
Hey, listen, I'm not going to be shy. My job as the nominee of my party is to advocate for my 80 assembly candidates in 2025. Because I do believe that if there's a Republican majority in the State House, we can accomplish more for New Jersey, particularly for the business community. Now, everyone in this room knows me, particularly people from Trenton, that if by chance I'm not successful in producing a Republican majority, I will work with the other side because that's my obligation. And I meet my obligations on behalf of 9 million people that work in the state, live in the state, and I'll work with mayors of all stripes as well. So, but my job is to produce a Republican majority, or I shouldn't be asking for a nomination. By the way, Tom Kean Sr. did some great things over his 8 years, and he had a Republican majority.
Okay. We heard this morning what we hear a lot, which is whether or not government should be run more like a business. But we also heard that there are differences. So in your mind, what are the biggest differences between how you run a government and how you run a business? Anybody?
Well, a business focuses generally on the profits with some concern, obviously, and should have concern for its employees. Government really needs to have a bigger heart. They need to have a different perspective than simply profit and loss. Can't forget it. Still, the taxpayer is your client, but it is different in terms of is a much broader perspective in government than there is in business. And I run a small business. I have 60 employees. I started myself, and I make that payroll every year, and I'm very, very concerned of every employee I have. But healthcare issues, transportation issues, helping the most vulnerable, that is a much broader question than sometimes business has to answer.
I run a multi-million-dollar business right now. It's called the City of Newark. So I do believe that government has to operate in some instances like business in terms of fiscal responsibility, making budgets, making sure that the revenues exceed the expenditures. All of those things are important for us in order to be able to do the things that Bramnick talked about, clearly taking care of our residents, making sure we lift up all boats. But the key is what is return on our investment. Our investment is actually people, not products. Our investment is people, making sure that people have better lives, that they have access to opportunity, that they have jobs, they can have access to healthcare, that the kids have quality schools, that the communities are safe. We have to invest in those things. And interestingly enough, when we do well at that, government business does better as well. So, why the cost of doing business in the state is not as heavily weighted as workforce or infrastructure? Because when you go to the store, you actually expect what you pay for, right? The problem in New Jersey is that people are paying for things that they're not getting. So if you're asking me to pay more money for a specific service, I want that service, and I want it to be the best service that you provide. So if I decide not to be in Pennsylvania and be in New Jersey, and I know as a business it might cost a little more, but what is that investment going towards? Is it going towards a better transportation system? Is it going towards better workforce? Am I getting the best labor force that I can get? Is it going towards digital inclusion and giving opportunity for me to have access to AI and internet and all of those services that I would not have in other places? Is it giving me the kind of diversity that I'm looking for, that I need to make my business expand, that I won't get in a place like Delaware? Do I have access to these things, right? And so that's what's important to us. And so you have the things that you market and the things that you invest in, you have to get a return on that investment. And I don't think the state is getting the return on the investment, or the businesses are receiving the return on the investments that they have to make in New Jersey. And you have to make it clear that when you pay for something in New Jersey, you're going to get the best employees, the incredible level of diversity, transportation that's unmatched, right? Your ability to get your goods and resources to the global market out here quicker than any other place in the world. That you're going to have access to some of the best universities, and the environment to do business will be friendly and easy in New Jersey. That's what you're paying for, right? People know they pay. You go to a restaurant, You go to restaurants that pay more money because you get quality service and quality food. If you want something different, you pay less. That's exactly what it is. And businesses understand that. If you think that they don't, then we're naive when we're talking about this process.
You know, Abraham Lincoln once said that government should only do what people in business can't do for themselves. And so that's what makes government different. But that does not mean that government shouldn't operate like a business. What the business community expects, what it demands, and what it should be given is an operation that's efficient. Operational efficiency. And there shouldn't be duplication, there shouldn't be delays, there should be quick answers. You know, Charlie Baker was the Republican governor of Massachusetts. He spent $500 million over his 8 years in office improving the management information systems in all of Massachusetts state government to make the customer experience so much more user-friendly, so much more efficient, so much more quick. We've got desktop systems in our Treasury Department and state government that are on DOS. What'd you say? He said that's crazy. It's embarrassing. You want companies to come here? You want companies to feel bullish about New Jersey? Deliver some operational efficiency. And also policy. Again, get rid of duplication. Here's what I hear from the Landlords Association, and they're right. If you own an apartment building, and it's got 3 units or more, you're subject to state inspection. No problem, we should be protecting the tenants, right? Guess who else inspects you? Municipality. Why? Tell you what I'll do as state government, I'll get out of the inspection business. I'll leave it to the mayors. He can have the revenue, he can have the expense, I'll get out of that business, I just downsize state government, and you're a landlord, you don't have to get the same inspection twice.
Well, speaking of housing, and you heard this morning as well, we seem in New Jersey to have a housing affordability problem across the entire market, not just in the sector of the market that affordable housing seeks to address, and the couple of 100,000 units that we need in that sector of the market, but across the rest of the market as well, right? So what is it that government can even start to think about doing about the rest?
Well, since Mount Laurel, and during the last 6 years, the government basically abandoned any policy on housing. They left it with the courts. So now the courts are deciding how many units should be built in every town. The legal fees and the cost to the towns were outrageous. So finally, the legislature took on this issue. The problem is that it didn't really change much. What we need to do is divide the state into 3 sections, north, south, and central. And affordable housing should be in regions. It shouldn't be per town. So now they have to determine how many units does a specific town get, regardless of the vacant or available space. This should be a statewide policy. We tried to argue that, but unfortunately with one-party government, only one party was at the table, so we're back to square one, where it's going to end up in the courts. It's going to end up where courts are going to decide how many units go into any one town, more litigation, more unfortunately adverse results on property taxes, on infrastructure. This is when it takes a joint policy team to determine how do we help people who can't afford housing, do it on a regional basis.
Who wants to go?
Suburbs, particularly New Jersey, are magnificent, but suburbs are not the engines of economic growth. Thriving cities are the engines of economic growth. And so what we need to do is address the affordable housing crisis in New Jersey, and there is a crisis. There's a shortage, and we want young people to be able to get a start here, as we want veterans and disabled and senior people to live with a high quality of life because of affordable housing. But we need to direct our population growth in this state over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years to our urban centers. And with that growth, create the foot traffic that creates that magical small business economy we see in New Jersey. I ask you all to come to Somerville. Now, he's doing the best he can without a whole lot of state help. But if you come to Somerville and see the transformation that has taken place with moderate, low, moderate, and market rate units, in a high-density format, in a New Jersey Transit bus station town, in a New Jersey Transit train station town, and on 1 mile of Main Street, not a single empty storefront, because of all the foot traffic we created to stimulate a local economy. We need to do that on a larger scale for a couple of reasons, okay? Because of what's going on with the climate, okay, and sustainability, we are a greener planet when people live in our urban centers, number one. Number two, if you take a look at the New Jersey state budget, 50% of that budget goes to only 7 of our 564 towns, in the form of state aid to schools, Medicaid, municipal aid, and emergency aid. It's been that way for 50 years. Are we going to fix this or not? And the way to do it is for state government to partner with mayors to make sure that over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years, our cities are thriving economic centers marked by economic vitality. And the way to help address that is through affordable housing. 100 years ago, where did our grandparents live? They lived in Newark. They lived in Newark. Did they not?
They did, and they were subsidized so they could move to the suburbs and got a house there. My family couldn't do that.
I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I love Rouse.
We were discriminated against, we couldn't do that. But
Different issue, different issue. But suburbs are not the engines of economic growth. Take a look at Pennsylvania. What does it have going for it? Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. It's not to say that Bucks County isn't beautiful. Somerset County is beautiful. Harnett County is beautiful. But suburbs are not the engines of economic growth. And affordable housing is one of the ways that we can help our urban centers thrive once again and create that tide that lifts all boats for future prosperity all across the state of New Jersey. 50% of your state budget goes to only 7 towns, all in the form of the annual fiscal Band-Aid. It's a recipe for economic lack of growth.
this guy mentions Pennsylvania, and I'm asking to run for governor over there.
Hey, just look at what other states are doing. The Democratic governor of Pennsylvania cut the business tax in half. Why? Because he competes with Ohio. Do you know what the business tax is in Ohio?
Have the most
It's
densely
0.
populated corridor in the country. He doesn't have to
Democrat-
pay for New Jersey Transit. He doesn't have to pay for the transportation infrastructure, or the digital infrastructure that we have here in New Jersey. That's something different. Let me talk about housing for a second, which I think is the #1 issue in this country, #1 issue in the state of New Jersey. Most people put 30% of their income on housing, or 50% of their income on housing. New Jersey is just a high cost of living state, difficult for people to live in New Jersey, whether you're in Newark or Maplewood. This idea of suburb is different. 40, 50 years ago, that argument works. Today, it doesn't. Irvington is a suburb of Newark. So is South Orange and Maplewood. Those are 2 different places. So is Livingston, by the way, and Millburn. Those are different townships than Irvington and Orange and East Orange, which are also suburbs of Newark. I think it's really about affordability. And this question of affordability always has race and class attached to it, right? So we have to get rid of that. Why? I've been across the state and found people who are sleeping in their cars because they can't afford to live in the places where they work. They work in Cape May, they work in some of these townships around the state of New Jersey and can't afford, they work there, can't afford to live there, so they're sleeping in their car, right? Or there's people who grow up in some of these communities that are dubbed suburbs, who go to schools there, go to great schools, go to college, get an education, can't afford to buy a home in that neighborhood. Homes are $600,000, $700,000. They can't afford, and the zoning laws won't allow them to build an ADU or a multi-unit dwelling there. So they have to move to where? Places like Newark, Jersey City, right? Hoboken. We can't take care of the people in our community and the people in your community as well, and migrants and homeless who come from all over the state of New Jersey and come into our community that's why money has to come to those cities, because we have to take care of all of
You don't want new people coming to your city?
Of course we do. We want you to take care of your people too. And we want us to have
As governor, I got one people. 9.3 million New Jerseyans. We're one community.
One community that you push everybody to the cities. That's what you're saying. But that's not what we want to do. What we want people to do is to build housing for folks in their community. When I say they, I mean from your township, from your city, from your neighborhood. If people grew up in your community, you should take care of them.
Somerville's population is up 50%.
If they want to leave, they should be
Somerville's population is up 50%, and the economy is thriving.
And Newark's population is up as well. Newark's population is up as well.
And you know
that's
that
what
the
makes sense.
urban municipalities don't have any requirement for affordable housing. And you know when we have regional contribution agreements.
Why do you think that is?
Well, why?
Yeah.
I'll tell you, because there is.
Because we have affordable housing.
Well, then you can take some more affordable housing,
that
and we're
means
happy.
you can take yours.
So what's wrong with having suburban communities send money for rehabilitation of urban communities if the money's available and you have the housing infrastructure
Because
and you have the transportation?
this subterfuge you guys brought about environment and about density and about all those things, it seems to me that you care about the density and the environment and all those things in so-called suburban communities, but it doesn't matter in cities that are distressed with and overburdened with environmental issues, with heat index, with issues around water, with issues around incinerators, all of those things. That's why we had to have a cumulative impact ordinance in New Jersey, in the state of New Jersey, and the city of Newark because of that. I just think we need to take care of
you're
the fair
rehabbing
share.
housing. You're rehabbing housing.
We have to.
Exactly. And,
We have to.
and suburbs are willing to assist in that regard.
Good, they should.
Right?
They should
And-
change
but-
their zoning laws and build housing for people who grow up in that
Well,
community.
that's already happening under all the court orders. I'm saying
No, actually,
some
it's
of
not
that
happening, which is why we're still talking about it, because it didn't happen.
The courts do it all the time. Been doing it for the last 7 years.
If you all don't mind, this is great, it's fantastic.
The court is depending on the legislators to see what they haven't done.
This is
Well,
fantastic.
we don't have. If you could send us a few more Republican votes, we can do it.
But, could I please ask, there are new funding proposals in one case, law in the other, for the Transportation Trust Fund and for New Jersey Transit. So what are we getting right or wrong on those two areas?
We can't not support the infrastructure. I said from the very beginning, I remember when I first got to the legislature, it's now 12 years ago, I think it's 13 years ago, I was asked at the very first panel I appeared at, it was the Somerset County Chamber of Commerce, and I was up there with all the legislators, and they said, what's the greatest challenge facing New Jersey? And I said, the Transportation Trust Fund. We need to do what Pennsylvania does, index it every year for inflation. And we need to do that because fuel efficiency standards are increasing and more people are driving EVs, which means that while the cost of the infrastructure is going up, the gas tax revenue is going to be going down. And I needed a police escort home. And 7 years later, Chris Christie increased the gas tax by the largest increase in state history. It went up 24 cents like overnight. We've got to support the infrastructure. It's getting more and more expensive, and it's the lifeblood to our economy. I think what frustrates people is what frustrates me. The budget's up $20 billion over 6 to 7 years. $20 billion. It's unprecedented. Chris's last budget was 36. We're now at 56. It's $20 billion. If you knew state government was spending $20 billion more, and the Transportation Trust Fund was adequately funded, and we didn't need a gas tax, and your property taxes were cut in half, and we didn't need to put a new surcharge on the corporate business tax, maybe you'd tip your hat to the governor. The frustrating part is we've squandered away an unbelievable opportunity of revenue growth over the past 6 years. That's what's frustrating people. But we can't not support the Transportation Trust Fund.
I was a Republican leader in the House for 10 years, and when we voted for the Transportation Trust Fund because it was out of money, we negotiated the end of the estate tax. It was actually a small reduction in the sales tax. So when you go to the table, when you go to the table and it was a mistake, the mistake was getting rid of the estate tax?
Yes.
Really?
And reducing the sales tax by that certain amount of
See,
pennies.
this is why you need two parties. It's exactly why. Because the Democrats in the legislature decided to raise taxes, spend money in a way that we've never seen before over the last 10 years. And now, all of a sudden, they're saying, well, we don't want to get rid of the estate tax. We don't want to do anything on the other side of the equation. That's why two parties are so important. And the Republicans, if we want to win, we have to make sure that we're the party that the public trusts. And I think we're willing to do that.
So I think it's a gimmick that these guys, this sales tax versus the gas tax. I mean, we reduced the sales tax by a couple of pennies. It saves the top 1% wealthiest in New Jersey about $800 a year, right? Middle income folks, it saves them about $90 a year. right? How much is that a month? And working people, it saves about $35 a year. But the flip
It's the
side,
best we could get.
the flip side of that is that by 2026, that number would have been $800 million that we have in our fund in New Jersey. So we squandered all that to do what? To say we're going to create this gas tax, right? And so now we're putting all our eggs into the gas tax basket and not getting the results that we hoped for. I think we need to do away with gimmicks, right? And put people at the table that are serious about financing, about budgeting, and figure out how to raise the revenues that we need in the state. We are losing money because we are trying to please or placate people politically instead of talking about hard truths. We have to raise revenue from somewhere. We have to create revenue. Some of that is taxes, and some of that is economic development and growth. How do we invest in small businesses, expand business? How do we invest in our economy? You can't say that you want a sound transportation infrastructure, that you want a transportation trust fund, but you just want all of the people who work to pay for that. It just doesn't make any sense to me. 600,000 people that ride New Jersey Transit every single day, more than 600,000 people that ride it from New Jersey alone, right? 50% of those people make $35,000 a year or less, don't own a car, get on the bus at least 5 days a week, right? They can't afford a 15% increase on fares to pay for transportation in the state. It's not sustainable. Whether you think theoretically that that's something we should do because it's part of your Republican values, it's just not sustainable. So we have to be able to tax businesses to pay for that. Why they benefit from getting workers back and forth there, not just on the buses, but the trains and the infrastructure, the transportation infrastructure takes 80 million people to New York City and 5 or 6 million to this place where he loves, Pennsylvania, and Connecticut and Boston and all these other places.
Not as much as Newark.
Not good. I want to see you in Newark. But
lowering taxes, though, lowering taxes is not a gimmick.
No, the gimmick is pretending that you're lowering taxes and giving people savings, and they're not really experiencing any savings.
It's no gimmick that people are moving to Florida because there's no state income tax.
What?
There's
No.
no gimmick that they're moving to Pennsylvania because they have a lower state income tax.
Most people aren't
That's
doing that
not a
because they
gimmick.
can't afford to move to Florida or afford to move to these places anyway. They're stuck in the cities that they're in New Jersey.
Well, then we
trying
keep
to make
some
a
other
living
people
in
here
this
as
city,
well. That'd be nice to
trying to
be able
find a
stay
decent
with all
job
of
and
us.
stay here.
We
Most
can all
people
stay here and
are
lower the
leaving.
taxes.
Jack, you wanted to jump in before one
Well,
last
first, this is starting to feel like Washington, D.C., and I want nothing to do with Washington, D.C., but let me say that one way you wouldn't need to raise taxes to help support New Jersey Transit is to increase New Jersey Transit revenue, not fares, and the way to increase its revenue is to get more people to use it. Same thing with the MTA, so we wouldn't need congestion pricing. More people will use mass transit when it's convenient, safe, and reliable, and right now it's not.
Okay. You are all seeking to be the governor who gets us through the rest of the decade and into the next decade. So, one of the themes of this conference has been New Jersey has gone up in its CNBC ranking of a place to do business. How do we get ourselves into the top 10 over the rest of the decade? What do we have to do to do that?
I'm surprised that it's going up. These guys have been talking so horribly about the governor. I think we would be going down. We obviously are going up. I mean, so the CBT tax and all this stuff didn't make us go in the opposite direction. We're going up and not down. I'm going to talk this time. I'm not going to let you interrupt me. So the
See that right there? We got 2 minutes left.
That's all
If
right.
you divide that by 3.
And I'm going to take it all. So but at the end of the day, the things that are heavily weighted, on the top 10 business is workforce, transportation infrastructure, and investment. The cost of doing business is weighted less. Those are the 3 things that are the highest. Those are also the things that New Jersey touts around the country as reasons why you should move to New Jersey, which makes it our assets, but also makes it our weaknesses. We have to invest in those areas and make sure we're getting more out of that, more return on investment in those areas so that businesses feel like they should come to New Jersey and that we are a better place to do business at, and make sure that our business or a community or environment is friendly here in the state of New Jersey. So
This is exactly why we need 2 parties. The mayor is so convinced as to everything he believes And since there's nobody else at the table, at least down in Trenton, nothing changes. We
two to
want to
one
hear
up
that
here.
perspective.
It's
We
two to
want to hear
one up
that
here.
perspective, but we want that countervailing force that represents all of New Jersey, not just one ideological view of New Jersey. And then we have the kind of New Jersey for the future that grows New Jersey and people are proud of and people will stay here.
This isn't campaign rhetoric. These are the facts. New Jerseyans face one of the highest overall tax burdens in the nation, the highest property taxes in the nation, the highest business taxes in the nation, and it's the worst state in the country in which to retire. Those are facts. And so, yes, people will think the state is great, it has a lot of things to offer, but yet 2 out of 3 New Jerseyans say they can't wait to leave when the opportunity presents itself. And so as governor, listen, I owned a business. I wouldn't want to own a business where 2/3 of the employees want to leave. If I was a coach, I wouldn't want to be on a team where, running a team where 2/3 of the players want to leave. I want to be governor of a place where people feel they can achieve their American dream no matter what stage of life they're at. Getting started, raising their family, retiring. We can change all that with thinking big, acting boldly with regard to the policy changes that New Jersey really needs. And by the way, you just looked at what other states have done. Other states have done it. Pennsylvania's done it. Missouri is doing some great things with regard to getting young
And you
people.
said we sound like political rhetoric? That sounds like political rhetoric to me.
Let me finish your thought. Go ahead.
Missouri's done a great job. They were experiencing an aging out crisis. So if somebody from outside Missouri went to one of its state colleges, of course they paid out-of-state tuition. If after you graduated, you stayed in Missouri and worked there for 3 years, the state government refunded you the difference between in-state and out-of-state tuition. What's Missouri trying to do? Get young people to take root in Missouri. These are neat ideas. I get excited by ideas. You're business owners. This is the business community. You should get excited by ideas. And so I think we can fix this thing. I really do. But to answer your question, my administration will be marked by, my commitment is, this will be a state where people feel they can achieve their American dream no matter what stage of life they're at or no matter what it is they want to do with their professional career.
I get excited when a Republican can win as governor.
Finish this out, go ahead, please. No? All right. Oh, no, I thought you had.
Absolutely.
No.
And I'm going to tell you something. If we continue to lose, right, there'll only be one voice, and one voice doesn't get the job done. There's no balance, and therefore New Jersey, in my judgment, is not as successful as it should be.
Can you give me a chance to agree with one thing Ciattarelli just said? Just one, because I don't think I agree with anything else he said. No, so I want to agree that we need to have a state where everybody can achieve their dreams, despite who they are, with the origin of where they come from, the language they speak, the nationality, their zip code. We have to have an opportunity for equity in this state and everybody to achieve that. And that takes a significant amount of investment. It takes a significant amount of inclusion. It takes broad ideas and a broad-based coalition that's just not narrow-minded around us versus them. It takes we need a broad-based coalition of folks across the business community, across the academic community, across families and government to be able to solve the challenges and issues we have in this state. We have to do that, right? And we can't do that simply by saying we're going to cut taxes for all the wealthy folks in New Jersey and let everybody else fend for themselves. That's just not sustainable economically or socially.
Well, I learned a lot, and I hope you all did too. Mr. Bramnick, Mr. Baraka, Mr. Ciattarelli, thank you very much.